Keith, and what we're talking is life, because if we just put this contextually, it really was a case of me sitting down and saying, I'm not happy with the way things are, and I need to do something about it. And I think that's the thing is, I could have said, well, I'm not happy with the way things are, but I guess I'm going to have to live with it. Because for all of us, every single person, we every now and again we evaluate where we are. Am I happy? Am I truly happy? Then the next question is, if I'm not happy, why am I not happy? What's causing me to be unhappy? And then if once we're able to identify that, the next question is, am I going to do anything about it? And if you are, then what do I do about it? And sometimes we might get help to deal with it. Sometimes it might just be us making a decision there and then to change things, but that's just it. And that's every now and again, just evaluate things, identify what's not working the way we want them to work, and then just be, just summon the courage to make a decision and take action to change things, because ultimately I'm responsible for my life. Keith, you're responsible for your life, and everyone here who's listening in, you're responsible for your life, and ultimately you've got to make the right choice for yourself. And while we think about other people, I could have been thinking about, but if I stop doing this, some of my listeners or some of the people in my community are going to be unhappy that DJ isn't showing up every day and all of that. And honestly, I did think about that. I did think about that a great deal, but I had to make the right decision for me. And, and I think that's the thing is, if you're listening to this right now, you might be thinking, well, is there any decision that you've been thinking of making where this is probably the right decision for you? This is probably what I should be doing, but we're a little afraid. And sometimes we do get afraid. It's what if it goes pear-shaped? And if that's the case, I guess a good question is, okay, if this is the right decision, but I'm afraid because it might go wrong, then what can I do to limit the likelihood of this going wrong? Do I get advice? Do I get help? And what are the risks? And what do I do to minimize the likelihood of these things happening? Because if this is the right decision to make, then it's the right decision to make. So I know life can be complicated, but it's really all about the decisions we make and the courage to make the right decision. So I hope that helps someone.
Wait a minute, so you're telling me I'm responsible for my life, so I can't just sort of go, hey man, my life sucks, I wish something would happen to make it better, and then sit back and wait for it to happen? You mean I've got to actually take control, take action, do something to make it better?
I know that's tongue-in-cheek, Keith, but it is true. The thing is, because we don't have control over a lot of things, sometimes we feel like we don't have control. But the truth is, we have more control than we think. Yes, there are a lot of things which are out of our control, but there's also a lot of things that are within our control. But until we appreciate how much control we have, we don't recognize how much control we have, and then we feel more helpless than we really are. But the moment that we take ownership and responsibility for the future we desire, and not just the future, we take responsibility for ourselves now, it becomes easier for us to identify what we have control over and then take control. So, and I know it's sometimes, the reality, and Keith, you know this as well, is when you're going through a tough time like we go through, when you're going through difficulties, when you're going through challenges, it can feel like or seem like things are out of control and you're helpless. And when you feel that way, you then can't see possibilities. And in situations like that, sometimes you want to, I call it, pick up your phone and call your encourager. No, don't call someone who you're going to get on the phone with and who's your whinging and moaning partner. But call that person who you know that when I spend 5 minutes on the phone with this person, they actually help to lift me up. And hopefully, all of us have at least one person like that in our lives. And if you don't, then just listen to this show. Go back and listen to past episodes of this show. And I'm pretty certain you will. And I do mean this, right? Because I do know what it's like to be in a place where life has hit us so hard. We do feel like we're helpless and everything's working against us and we have no control. And that's a difficult place to be. And if you can't identify one encourager who you can call, go back and listen to past episodes of this show and just play them one after another, and it would help you it helps to begin to build hope, because it's not that you're helpless, it's that you feel hopeless. And when you begin to, and it doesn't, you'll be surprised how just having words from the right sources, just bombarding your brain, contrary to the whatever that you've been thinking on for a long time, and then you begin to be hopeful. When you begin to be hopeful, that's when you really start seeing the possibilities, and you're able to start to take control, because that's where it starts from. So, it's life is tough, right? But our feelings are very powerful. But the truth is, they're also very deceptive. They're extremely powerful, but most of the time they're just deceiving us to believe that we're not as powerful as we really are.
Yeah, and I would agree with absolutely every word that you've said there. Yeah, that's all there is to say on that. I think I'd completely agree with you there. That is so true. That is so true. I think what I want to do is just kind of let that sink in kind of in the background subconsciously. And while that's happening, let's change tack just a little bit. One thing you mentioned early on was the concept of, what do you call it? Non-selling buyer conversations. Yeah. So this, what's kind of context in which one would use that? I presume that's, well, yeah. You tell me what's the context of using that, because it sounds as though it's going to be around selling things, but I mean we're told so often these days, selling to people doesn't work. I know quite a few people who have attempted to start up their own businesses, and they've folded because they weren't able to get people to buy stuff from them. They weren't able to sell whatever it was that they had to offer. I mean, people get that in even outside of business life, even in their social lives, attempting to sell ideas to people. It just doesn't work. So where are we all going wrong? Is any of this going to help me with any of that?
I really do like, what you said there about selling ideas, because ultimately that's the only thing, it is getting people to buy into an idea. I like our listeners to just think about that for a moment. Everything really with persuasion and influence is about getting people to buy into an idea. That's always what it is, right? So whether it is someone who wants to ask someone out on a date, or someone who wants to take things further and go into a relationship with them, whether it is a parent who wants to persuade or their child to behave in a certain way, or whether it's a child who wants to convince their parent to agree to have them go have a sleepover at a friend's place, or whether it is a person who is trying to persuade a potential employer that having them in their team will be one of the best decisions they'll ever make, or whether it's someone who has started a business who is looking to persuade a potential client that buying, investing in the service they provide will help them get what they want. Or just anything, whether it's just where the whole idea, whether it's a politician, right, who is trying to persuade the electorate that voting for them is going to help them have a better life. The reality is, from the most basic things, with our interaction with people, we are always looking to get people to buy into our ideas. Now, selling is the way we've been trained, or we expect to do things, which is, I want to sell this idea, I want to sell this solution, I want to sell this product, and we go in looking to sell. Now, it's really interesting, because I'm sure most of us have heard this phrase before, that people don't like to be sold to, they like to buy. Right. So and that's so very true. Right. Especially these days, we have a very skeptical marketplace. People don't like to be sold to. The moment you start to try to sell to people, what happens is this protective barrier goes up, because people are afraid. What are they afraid of? They're afraid of making the wrong decision. And so when the moment they sense that you're trying to convince them to do something that they may actually not be sure they want to do, straight away their defenses go up to protect them. And then there is a certain energy that comes from them to us. And that's why many of us don't feel comfortable selling, because we feel awkward because we sense when that barrier goes up and we don't like it because it's almost as bad as rejection. So that's why I don't know if this happens for some of the people who are here where you go to anything. It could be something as simple as wanting to ask your boss for the day off when you know that there's some major project we're working on. And you've been playing it in your head. How do I go and tell them? And you kind of go to them. And the moment you think that they sense that you're looking to ask them for the day off, you can sense that it's almost like they brace themselves. And you start feeling uncomfortable with that conversation all of a sudden because we don't like having to deal with that barrier. But selling triggers that barrier. So it's not just, like a business selling products or services. It's really the whole idea of actually getting people to buy into your idea without selling, because selling triggers that barrier. They're uncomfortable and we're uncomfortable. And the thing is, even if you're the sort of person who is, because what sales training does is sales training primarily conditions you to choose to not let that barrier affect you. So in a sense, what a good sales training program does is it trains you to refuse to let the barrier intimidate you, and it trains you to keep on hitting at that barrier until it comes down. Right? That's what effective sales training is first of all, it trains you to not allow the barrier to affect you, but also it trains you to how to bring down that barrier so that they can actually take action. Now, the challenge with that is sometimes people don't like it, and that's the reason why many of us get irritated by a lot of salespeople, because we sense when it seems like they're not listening to you. It feels like you're not interested, but they kind of are trying to convince you to be interested, and you don't like it. I don't like it. That's one thing that happens. Another thing that does happen is so there's the people don't enjoy it when people sell to them, and the other thing is, even if you do pull down that barrier and they do buy, within a short space of time, they get buyer's remorse because they actually didn't really buy. They were sold to. But imagine a scenario where a barrier doesn't come up at all, but instead they lean forward and they're actually asking you, what do you have for me? Before you even make an offer. So the whole idea of non-selling buyer conversations is you don't try to sell to them, but instead you have a conversation with them where they actually lean forward. And in a sense, they want what you have to offer more than you even want to offer it to them. And so we don't have any of that discomfort. We don't have any of that awkwardness that comes from trying to sell to people, for you as well as for them. And this could be anything from a job interview. This could be anything from looking to ask a person out, or looking to have a person invest in the products and services that your business provides. Pretty much anything where you're looking to get a person to buy into an idea.
That all sounds absolutely amazing. Is that really the case? Can that actually really work in all situations?
Actually, yes, it can. Yeah, because, like I said, people like to buy. See, we've got to understand that people like to buy. A lot of times with the people that I work with, I do a lot of work with coaches and consultants, as you are aware. And a lot of times people come to me and they complain and they say people are not interested. They say, you know what, they're not interested in spending money in getting this outcome. And when people say that, I say, well, that is your truth, but that's not necessarily the truth. What they're not interested in is what you're selling to them, right? Because this is the way things work. Now, we all have things we aspire to. We all have things that we desire. We all have things that we want. All of us do, right? Now, and let me ask you a question, Keith. I don't know. So let's think about one thing that you really, really, it's a big deal, and it's one thing you would like to have this year. And if you're listening to this as well, I'd like you to really think about it. That is something that you really, really desire to have this year. Something. Just think about it for a moment. Whatever that thing is, right? If you want to write it down, feel free to write it down. Okay, good. Now, I want you to imagine that you come across someone, right? And you haven't interacted with them and engaged with them and learned more about them. You realize to yourself, this person is really likable. and this person is very knowledgeable, and this person that actually, is credible. Okay. I also want you to imagine that this individual